they very much, this is who we are and we're here to help you if you need help. But they don't go any layers deeper than that. And then they wonder why what they're doing isn't working for them. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the Video Marketers Vault podcast. For those out there who do not know who I am, my name is Evan Andrews, and on this podcast, I've started it so that we can teach and educate small to medium-sized business owners out there how you can leverage video in your marketing to help you build your brands and personal brands here in 2025 and even beyond. So like I mentioned before, this is the inaugural first episode. I'm super excited. And I have one of my, I think one of my best friends he's also a student of mine. I help coach him a little bit in what he's doing with his video business. But welcome to the show, Brett Hammon. Brett, how are you doing today?
Hey, good to see you, man.
Yeah, man. Dude, I know that we've kind of hit it off in what it is that we do over there at Master Filmmaker. You've kind of taken to the program pretty well and seemingly learning a lot and going through it. But we're not here to talk about that so much today. We're here to talk about what it is that we both do in helping the clients that we work with in their video and video marketing strategies. So today, specifically, what I wanted to go over is really teaching and educating business owners out there on how they can use video content to teach and educate their ideal customers. Yep. So for those out there that don't know you, Brett, just take a little bit of time to introduce yourself and tell others out there exactly what it is that you do.
Yeah, sure. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me on. This is great. My name is Brett Hammon Films. I'm located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I got into video about 10 years ago. That was kind of the first time I ever picked up a DSLR camera for the first time. Quickly fell in love with it. And I started my business, Brett Hammon Films, about 5 years ago. So I've been doing this thing professionally for about 5 years.
Nice.
And had a chance to work with some great clients. And now I'm getting a chance to learn a lot from you about some of the stuff that I didn't have a clue on how to do from a business perspective. So
yeah, up until about 5 years ago, I didn't have a clue either. My business Vandrews Media has been in existence for about, I think we're in year 5 now. Nice. But I've been doing video work since 2013. So our story's very, very similar. But Brett, today, what we're going to kind of go over and talk about is, really, because I think a lot of, especially like service businesses for sure, in my experiences, they don't really understand the power of like why educating is really important and how they can do that through content. How that ultimately positions them as the authority in their space, right? Mm-hmm. And then just really what the long-term benefits of giving before you ask anybody to do something. Right, through content. So that's kind of what we're going to kind of touch on today. But, when I first started, even before I was a student over at Master Filmmaker, right? Like I when I quit my job because I got COVID and the kind of whole thing happened, right? Mm-hmm. I started a YouTube channel, right? And I think as creatives, we attach ourselves to what we know, right? So I was really doing stuff about like gear and like this is how to make videos and this, that, and the other, right? Which ultimately really only attracted other people that wanted to do the same thing, which I don't think most businesses out there actually really want to do it themselves. They may want to build a team or something in the future, but when they first start, I haven't really seen somebody that wants to like learn how to do it themselves. They'd rather just pay somebody to be able to do it. Yeah. But what I started first doing when I started making content for business owners was a lot of educational content. I don't know what particularly you've done with the clients that you've worked with before, but and again, this is the reason why I started this podcast is because I really want to educate people out there on how to use these tools the most effective way possible.
Yeah.
But talk to me a little bit about your experience with educational content, whether it's been from a you've done it for
Mhm.
people or from a consumer lens, because I know that that's the kind of content that I love,
Yeah, me too.
right? I love to learn.
Yeah, it's the kind of content I love too. And we must be on the same wavelength, because that's where my head's been at lately, is like just fully wanting to dive in to making educational content, because I feel like it doesn't just build trust with your audience, but it also, like, it kind of educates them. It increases their engagement. It differentiates you from your from other competition in the area. It
Right.
builds loyalty. I mean, it just does so many great things from many different facets. And I think it's just one of those, like, man, it is low hanging fruit, you know.
No, yeah, no, I totally. It's because what do most of them do? Right? If most businesses, like, again, I'm going to always reference service businesses, right? Because that's kind of who, I don't really care what your service is. If you provide a service, I know that I can help you through variable types of content. But most service businesses, when they think, oh, I have to make content to, like, because I'm being kind of forced into it. I said this in a workshop that I was at yesterday. But why do they feel like they're being forced into making it? Well, it's because your market wants it. But most of them, they get up and they say, this is who I am and this is what I do. And if you want it, come and get it, which that might work here and there.
Mhm.
But when I see that, like, every single video is just that,
Mhm.
um, it gets really boring really quickly.
Yeah.
Right. And then they wonder why it doesn't work. And then they stop doing it. And then, they stop putting the investment into it.
Yep.
Uh, and, and that's just what I've seen about the ultimate downfall of why people think that, like, content can't or doesn't work for them.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's just that they feel like it's got to be something that it really isn't.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
think educational content I think it's for service businesses, it's the hardest thing to wrap your head around,
Yeah.
right? Like, why do I need to do it? But if you look at it from a long-term perspective of, I'm doing this so that when somebody does come across it, does get what they need out of it, I will ultimately get what I need out of it.
Yep.
Right. Because
And
the inverse to that is, if you just want clients, what do? We just run ads,
exactly.
right? Like, that would be the inverse of
Yep.
it. But not everybody wants to pay for the ad spend budget. So it's
Mhm.
kind of like you got to pick your poison, right? Like, you can put a bunch of emphasis into something that will pay off eventually in the future, or if you're trying to make something happen faster, you have to just go a different route,
Yeah.
and you can still use video in those components as well.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, the educational standpoint, I started making a ton of it myself. I think I went like 2 solid years, and I
Mhm.
still rarely miss a day.
Mm.
But I've put the intentionality into making more and more content in any way, shape, or form that I can,
Mhm.
because I test different things. I used to do just a lot of talking head stuff. Like, I would sit down once a month and just set up the camera. I'd have my kind of outlines and everything in front of me, and I would just go, and it would just be intentional. Once a month, I'd spend 3 hours. I'd sit down and I would do it all, and I would
Yeah.
just get it out of the way. And my editor would edit everything, and then I'd post everything.
Mhm.
Right. But now I play around with different stylings, different things that I do. Like, I'll record, my coaching sessions and stuff, and then pull out clips from there, and just do what I can to show people that, hey, like, I am a real person. I'm
Mhm.
not like this just robot business that, like, is trying to get you to spend your money,
Yeah.
right? Hey guys, I do want you to spend your money with me. So, and I'm sure Brett wants the same thing. But I'm not this, like, mindless drone that just, like, is doing it because I'm supposed to do it.
Yeah.
Right. I'm doing it because I want to do it. Um, but I think sometimes that's hard.
Mhm.
And what I've more than seen and gotten actual feedback on this is that we kind of become, as what our businesses are, we're kind of like accountability partners
Mm.
for people. At least, literally, somebody told me that yesterday. Like, somebody
Mm.
that I work with a lot, she was like, Evan is, my accountability partner in me actually making content.
Nice.
And I never really thought about it from that perspective, but I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever experienced anything like that, where
Yeah.
somebody kind of just said, like, hey, if you didn't do this thing for me, I wouldn't see myself doing it.
Yeah. Well, actually, you've kind of been that for me recently, because um, making content and making ads and stuff like that is something that's kind of new to me. So I
Mhm.
ended up, you and I have been on tons of calls recently, and I've just been like watching the way that you're creating content and watching the way that you structure your ads and do direct to camera work. And so you've kind of been that accountability for me recently in the sense that I'm like,
Nice.
yeah, it's been really good because I don't love to just turn on the camera and start talking to it. It's like
Sure.
not my natural gifting,
Sure.
but like when you and I are on calls and we're chatting through it, it's like I come off the call feeling like a little less daunted by the task, and I'm like, okay,
Right.
I think I can do this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, and I would say that as because a lot of people tell me the same thing. They're like, you make it look like it's so easy. It's like
Mm-hmm.
if you're sitting in the room with me while I'm doing some of that direct to camera stuff, dude, it's not easy.
Yeah,
Right.
it's not.
Like it's really, really not. And I am an introvert like through and through.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like it sometimes takes a lot for me to like because I don't have an accountability partner.
Mm.
I do it because one, I know that I need to,
Yeah.
right? And two, I know that somewhere down the road, through the onslaught of things that I post,
Mm-hmm.
somebody somewhere is going to connect. Somebody somewhere is going to understand.
Yep.
Somebody somewhere is going to say, hey, I've seen this guy for the last 6 months
Mm-hmm.
on my feed, and now I have this current issue of something that he just talked about.
Yeah.
Let me start a conversation.
Yep.
Because that's all it is. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what lead generation is. It's how do I start a conversation, and what channels can I do? What channels can I use to be able to do that?
Right.
Right.
Yep.
And content. If you have you read $100 Million Leads?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like that's one of the channels. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, it's not one like that is where it's like ads, where it's like okay, we can put spend towards it and guarantee the impression and get all the extra viewership,
Mm-hmm.
but it is one of the channels nonetheless.
Yep.
But I just think that most businesses, and I've only had one client who has really been with me for a little over a year,
Mm.
that kind of understands that. Because like we look back at her content and stuff, and it's like she doesn't get like a ton of business or
Mm.
anything out of the content, but she knows from a mindset standpoint of somebody at some point along the journey is going to run into something that's
Yeah.
going to start a conversation that may or may not bear fruit.
Right.
But when you look at content like a quick fix to something, I think that's the time that you lose,
Yeah. Right.
because it's not right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of our education when we talk about like we have to build trust and do education. Like, that's a lot of what I have to educate about is like content is not this kind of quick fix thing.
Yeah.
But overall, I think what it does is it does establish that authority,
Mm.
right? The more reps that like it's again. So I was listening to a Tony Robbins thing the other day, and he was talking about, I think he said something about at a seminar, he asked people to raise their hand if they worked out 5 days a week.
Mm.
And he said, you can't deny that because when those people stand up, you can tell that they work out 5 days a week. And it's kind of the same thing with making that authoritative content, telling people your expertise and different things like that. But because I don't know the laundry list of kind of clients that you've worked with. I'm sure
Yeah.
you've done like all kinds of different things, but
Oh, yeah.
have you ever done any kind of introspective or authority based content for the people that you've worked with?
Yeah, I got my start working with American Eagle and Aerie in the video world, and a
Nice.
lot of their content was, this is how you wear our clothes. This is how you can mix and match this shirt with this,
Oh, nice.
this pair of jeans. Then you can mix and match this, button down with this tank top. And it's like that educational content for them converted massively.
Yeah.
It was like the number one converting social media content. It was their education.
I was just about to ask. It was for socials.
It was for social. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Nice.
And so that was the stuff that ended up getting the clicks and the eyeballs. And I remember just kind of filing that away and being like, interesting. So they're positioning themselves as implementing the educational, like, this is the secret. This is how you look good in this shirt or something like that.
Right.
Which gets them to sell more clothes. And I was like, that makes sense. This is
right.
I can start using this beyond just how to mix and match a shirt and a tank top. Like this crosses the boundaries into all sorts of different clients.
Oh, no, yeah, totally. It's kind of also to like Hormozy says, like if you just provide the goodwill, because like I don't think they made that content with the intentionality from the specific piece of content to say,
Mhm.
hey, buy this thing.
Right.
Right. But Hormozy says in a lot of his content that if you just provide enough goodwill,
Hmm.
people will eventually do the next thing.
Totally.
Right. So just by being present, being in the placements, showing up consistently,
Hmm.
and not coming off as you hear it in my calls a lot, the used car salesman,
Yep.
right? Like if you're not that, people will naturally say, "Hey, where can I buy that tank top?" Or
Hmm.
I mean, I want to see how much those shorts cost,
Yeah.
right? It's a natural kind of uh inquiry peak to their brain where they naturally do the next thing,
Yeah.
right? But that that kind of leads me into my last kind of discussion point around what we're talking about today is just the power of giving overall,
Yeah.
right? When I first started making content for myself, I kind of, because Hermosi said this in I think a lot of his early content as well, where like you have to have a CTA, you have
Right.
to tell him what to do next,
Yep.
right? He's kind of he's kind of welched on that a little bit and like turned it around. Like I just mentioned, like he if you even go watch a lot of his content now, there is no CTAs.
Right. Yeah.
Like
He.
there's just nothing there. It's like, hey, just if you get value out of this, like you'll know what to do, right?
Yeah.
You'll go find my page, you'll go to my website, you'll whatever. Now, in his podcasts and stuff like that, he does like have breaks where he like says, "Hey, by the way, if you're enjoying this, you can go get more free stuff over here."
Yep.
But I notice in his content, he just doesn't do any of that anymore, and that's what I did at the beginning when I
Mm.
started doing like the intentional sit down talking head stuff. Is I would do even if it was at bare minimum, like and follow my page for more,
Hmm.
right? I think that one is the only one that if you were like dead set on like I have to have a CTA, like that's the only one that I would really recommend.
Yeah.
But I think this also is definitely just in alignment with how I am as a person. You talk to Eric, he might tell you something different,
Yeah.
right? And for those out there who don't know who that is, that's just one of my colleagues over at Master Filmmaker, who is also, one of Brett's coaches as well.
Hmm.
But Eric might tell you something different because you go look at Eric, a lot of Eric's content for the way that he structures his stuff. It's CTA on everything.
Right.
And that's totally fine. It's just kind of in alignment with who you are as an individual.
Right.
Um, but the most important part of I think content in general, if I could leave anybody watching this podcast with anything that does own a business, a service business, or provide product, whatever it is, I think it's mostly about the person more than the brand. And
Yeah.
when you focus on it more from that personality standpoint than the quote unquote brand aspect, you you will have a better time. The content will perform overall better. Like for example, the American Eagle and the Aries stuff.
Hmm.
While yes, they do have this monolith of a brand,
Yeah.
right? They really likely focused on the person that was in, because that person needs to align with the viewer,
Yeah. Exactly.
right?
Yep.
And without that, it makes it much hard. Like if they just did like this fancy schmancy, like, plop down the clothes, boom, 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 logo comes in, like
Hmm.
it feels like an ad,
Yeah.
right? Doesn't
Right.
feel personable, but I don't know if you can attest to that a little bit on,
Yeah.
um, CTA overall and then personality shining through in the content.
Yeah. Well, going to the personality thing that you were talking about, I love Donald Miller talks about positioning yourself as Yoda and your client as Luke Skywalker. And so uh, your client is the hero, they're the hero of their story. And
Mm-hmm.
you're Yoda, you're the helpful guide.
Mm-hmm.
And Yoda helps Luke navigate that path by providing guidance and kind of illuminating the path ahead, guiding them through their dark challenges toward success. And I think Alex Hormozy does that a lot too, where he is just constantly guiding you. And like you said, he often doesn't even have a CTA. He's
Yeah.
just, you just get to know his personality, you get to know him, you develop that parasocial relationship with him, And suddenly it's like, I trust this guy and I will buy from this guy. Like if he
Right.
drops something, I will buy it. Why? Because he's earned, it's like I feel
Yeah.
like I know him at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I totally agree. It's the connectivity standpoint that just selling and selling and selling just doesn't ultimately do.
Right.
It's weird enough. I see it a lot with like home service
Mm,
businesses. So like the number one that I know is like roofers. Like there's
mm,
a ton in my area. I'm in Houston, Texas.
yeah.
So it's like there's one on every block, right? But some of the ones that I do see make content or get on a live or post a story or whatever it might be, right? They very much, this is who we are and we're here to help you if you need help, right?
Mm,
But they don't go any layers deeper than that, and then
right.
they wonder why what they're doing isn't working for them, right?
Hmm.
So it's just one of those things that I think, if you do more education,
Yeah.
right? If you do more personality,
Hmm.
and you just do it for longer without anybody expecting anything out of it, right? I
Yeah.
think that's when you get over that tipping point of it being that fruit bearer that you actually want it to be,
Yeah. So
right?
when you have a roofer come to you and they're like, what do you tell them in terms of like, if they're like, we want to make content, but we don't know what kind of content, like, how do you guide them in that?
Well, first, I mean, and as you know this, you always have to figure out like what's your main goal?
Yeah.
Like, why do you want to make content? Oh, well, we want to get this, right? And there's certain trigger and indicators there that tell me, okay, this would be like an overall best strategy for
Mm,
you guys. Like for example, if I asked them the question, well, how is your lead generation? And they were like, we have no problem um, generating leads. We just find it really hard to actually get people to let us come out or
mm,
whatever, right? I would then focus more on educational, long and short form content for
mm.
their channels,
Yeah.
right? Because that stuff's also going to go out in an email list and all of that stuff for people that they do have on their list, right?
Hmm.
So it just kind of depends on what they want to do. If they said, we have a problem with lead generation, great. We're likely going to run ads
Yeah.
to generate leads, right? We can sprinkle in some of that kind of educational content and stuff just as a form of goodwill when maybe somebody does see the ad, go check them out. They have more that they can view, but it just kind of depends on what their overall thing is, and that's why I always ask that question, like what's not working in the way that you wish it was,
Yeah.
and
Right.
then the secondary question is, why do you think video is the vehicle to help you get there,
Love it. Yeah.
right? So that's just really it is what it is for me, but it everybody's problems are different, and that's what I figured out in this process is,
Yeah.
especially with like crafting offers and things around video content, is you can have more than one offer,
Mm,
right? Like that's what I got caught up in as a student master filmmaker early, was like I kind of had one offer,
yeah.
and it was like I'd get these calls and people would come in and they would all have different issues, and I'm
Mm,
like, okay, this offer doesn't solve that problem really. It solves my problem of like, yeah, I need a client,
yeah.
right? But it doesn't really help them. So that's what I had to wrap my head around, in the beginning, is just really understanding that like you can solve different problems
Yeah.
with your packages. The packages will look different and they will be different mechanisms.
Yeah. You
So,
helped me with that recently because I was having a trouble. I was like moving into the medical health and wellness niche,
mhm.
and like I needed to craft an offer. So I remember you and I were on a call and you were like, so what's your current offer? And I was like, well, I'm doing like a free brand message video. And then you asked me a couple follow-up questions. You're like, well, what's your goal? What? And I ended up realizing, I was like, yeah, I actually hadn't thought this through completely. And you're like, yeah, I would consider doing a free brand message video with purchase.
Yeah,
And I remember being like, oh, I hadn't thought of that.
yeah,
And like that night, I re-recorded my ad with that free brand
sure,
video with purchase, and it was like
yeah,
suddenly it just the whole ad just kind of pivoted into place, and I actually started to get more engagement on it too.
nice.
Yeah, just kind of cool the way, like just kind of what you were talking about. Just
Yeah, because I mean, we all default to what we think we know, right? And then you ask the questions and you get help, which is what we're here to do with the businesses that we ultimately want to work with as well. So,
Yeah.
But Brett, that brings us to the end of this episode today.
Mm.
I really appreciate you joining me to wrap up kind of everything that we did.
Yeah.
Educational content is key. It is a longevity game.
Yep.
And giving before asking is likely the key to your success with video content out there. So if you are a small, medium-sized business, service business, product business, I don't really care what it is. If you take away anything from today, take away those 3 key things, and I promise that you will have some success with what it is that you're doing with your video content. So if you are discovering this podcast for the first time, we are a YouTube exclusive only podcast. So make sure you subscribe to this channel. You will get all of the latest updates and all of the shorts and clips and everything that does come out of this podcast as well on your feed. Leave us any comments, anything that you may have a question about in what we talked about today, anything that you might want to hear about in the future. Please leave us those comments down below. It will really help us bring you actually topics and things that you guys out there who do have businesses or are thinking about starting or whatever it might be. No comment, no question is silly. We will do something on it, I promise. But Brett, I really appreciate you again joining me today. I'll let you know when everything here is about to go live, and make sure that you are able to see everything, and I'll make sure that I tag you and everything as well. If you guys are you said you're in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What area of Pennsylvania?
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, that's right.
Yeah.
So if you're in the Pittsburgh or surrounding areas, I'm in Houston, so it's like we're in our own like weird place. Like it takes me forever to get out of Texas, but I'm sure that you can facilitate, other businesses in and around the Pittsburgh area. But you can get some more information on Brett and Brett Hammon Films over in the description below this video. Yep. I'll have all the backlinks and everything to him there, so you guys can get more information on him, as well as myself here at Vandrews Media in the Houston area. So with that, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.